So how can you learn to glow at work? Well, let me begin by telling you a story. The story of Fred and Frank. Fred and Frank, middle managers in a normal company, are both given the same task to do. Fred comes in the morning, closes the door, sits at his desk, puts his head down, rings his wife, says, "Darling, I'm not going to be back for days and days. This project is going to take all my time." And works and works and works at it on his own. And at the end of it, it's competent, but it's not really great. It's not innovative. He's not glowing. Let me contrast that with Frank. Frank's given the same project. And this is what Frank does. Instead of going into his office and closing the door, he thinks about, who do I know who can help me in this task? He emails them, he goes and chats with them. He thinks, how could I make this really creative? And so he thinks about what would be the question or the vision that could really ignite this project. And at the end of it, whereas Fred is feeling exhausted, worn out, and his wife thinks, I'll never see this guy, he's never here, Frank is energized, excited. And whereas Fred is downhearted, Frank is glowing. Now, you know yourself, there's times when you feel as if you're glowing, and you've seen it in other people. And so the question that I've asked and I address in my book, Glow, is how do you do that? I mean, how do you become a Frank rather than a Fred? Well, I've looked at lots of Franks and lots of Freds over the last couple of years, and there's three things that I want to suggest you could do right now to make a difference. The first is that Fred made the mistake of thinking that he was the only person in the world who could solve this problem. And that's why he hunkered down, that's why he closed the door, that's why he rang his wife and said, I just have to work on this constantly. On the other hand, Frank understood that actually, in a sort of joined-up global world that we live in fact, you can't do everything yourself. It's great to be able to reach out to others. And Frank had become highly cooperative. He's a cooperative person. He's established great friendships. He knows some good people. So that's the first thing. The first thing is, if you want to glow, you have to learn how to trust and cooperate with people. Well, is that going to be enough? Well, frankly, it's good, but you need to do more than that. The second thing that you need to do, and we saw it in Frank, is that you have to also reach out to people who are different from you. The truth of it is that all of us are incredibly relaxed and happy with people who are just like us. The problem with spending all your time with people who are just like you is that's not really where new ideas come. New ideas come because you're suddenly confronted with somebody with a different mindset, somebody with a different nationality, somebody at a different age, somebody from a different company. So the really smart people who want to glow, people like Frank, understand that building networks across a range of people is just a marvelous way of ensuring that you're always glowing. But there's a third thing that Frank did. Frank understood that to get people excited, he had to turn that task into a question or into a vision. And I find that generally, people who glow are very adept at reaching inside themselves and finding things that are important and meaningful to them, and things that excite others and create innovation. So, are you going to be a Fred, or are you going to be a Frank? It's your choice.